negative or challenging feedback? What do you think about that?
Same thing goes about the platitudes. If someone's just vague, I'm like, what specifically? Because also
Mm.
you need to be clear whether there is actually constructive feedback, whether it's an opinion, whether it's a perception, whether it's coming from someone's own kind of agenda. There's so much behind a thing. So I always think the first thing to do is to unpack it a little bit, or to get specifics, and also take a step back. Um, it's easy to react when you assume a meaning behind
Mm.
something. Better to ask to get a bit more information before you assume the criticism is coming your way.
I have a really good example, and I don't know if forgive me if I've shared this anecdote before. I may have done, but when I was doing my PG cert, there was a module on self-reflection, and I put a call out to my team. I sort of, we didn't run 360 feedback at my institution. And so I just took it on myself. I was going to put the question out there, and I asked, kind of some senior people, and I put it out to my team. And I was like, what do you wish I, do more of, do less of, whatever, and kind of did a call for feedback. And it was really interesting. And I was really taken aback, because within a few minutes of each other, I received two very opposing emails. I had one from someone who said they'd been in this sector for donkey's years, and I was the best manager they'd ever had. And I had, at the same time, from someone at the other end, opposite end of their career, saying what a terrible manager I was, and how socially awkward I was, and how I wasn't very, and it was this feedback that felt like it was totally out of the blue. I kind of was gobsmacked by it, because I thought we actually had a really good working relationship, and so it felt unduly harsh for where I thought we were. So it really took me by surprise, and I had to take a step back, and I kind of had to talk it through with a very trusted, confidential friend, and be like, I'm not even sure how to respond to that. I was so flabbergasted, and I was pleased. Actually, I went back in a very measured way, and I was, and I responded, and I took it seriously, and I was like, okay, well, let's try and unpack. I asked some questions, and I tried to not be defensive over what was, their genuine thoughts and opinion. But so I tried not to let it undermine my own confidence and sense of self. And I had to really think about, like, okay, do I recognize anything that they're saying? Like, where do I, and it I really tried to unpick it with them, but it was definitely not the reaction I would have had 10 or 15 years earlier in my career had I received a similar email. So that was, that was a funny experience. But I learned a lot from it. Don't assume that you think you know what people are gonna say, because yeah, it wasn't at all what I thought I would get back. I didn't, not that I thought that everybody loved me, but it was, yeah, it was a little brutal.
Especially
Assessment.
if they were commenting on you. When you said about, you're socially awkward, I was sitting there thinking, well, that's nothing to do with your competence as a person. It's like a perception they have of your character. That's irrelevant. Like, that's not, what's that got to
Yeah.
do? I was just thinking that. I used to react quite acutely to some of those things. So I will always try and like sort it out, and I'd be like, well, that's a factual thing. Like, they've provided some evidence there, and then this seems to be like that they maybe don't like my approach. So again, I'd be like, trying to unpack it and think, and or ask some questions to unpack which bit of it. Because when someone's like really, they say something, a really huge statement,
Mm-hmm.
like someone once said to me that I bulldoze my team in team meetings. And I was obviously, my first instinct was, oh my God, that no, I try not to do that. And I know I have a tendency to kind of get a bit ahead of myself. And when I asked them questions to unpack it, it was that I was going a bit too fast for them in terms of like the pace of change. And they had a lot of anxiety about the change, but decided instead of address, we had, which we unpacked, but again, it was like their top level reaction was not to think. They weren't thinking. The irony of it, of course, we're doing it and having a discussion, we're thinking reflectively, and not everyone is. They say something and they don't necessarily give it. We give it 10 layers of underpinnings instantly the second we see it, see all these things underneath it. But actually, it was their own insecurity, anxiety, and yes, I was going a little bit fast, but that's very different to bulldozing everyone. Like when we'd unpacked it. So I do think, we tend to like build an infrastructure for things, and actually we need to be like, let's just ask exactly what they meant by that.
Yeah.
I also think sometimes feedback comes out as, it's like a sort of an emotional outburst where someone needs to get something off their chest, and it's not necessarily about you per se. It's just they're upset you happen to be the person who's done the thing that was the last straw, and so you're getting it, whether you're really the main cause of all of their anxiety and upset or not. It's just wrong person, wrong place, wrong time kind of thing. Which is hard to be on the end of. Like, actually, I had an experience of receiving that from somebody, and it was the day that I decided to leave higher education. During the meeting, I was able to like hold it and hear it. And yes, I can see why you feel that, and here's some things that you might not know and some context, and here's what I intended by that, and sort of held the whole conversation. Hung up from, it was a Teams call, hung up from the Teams call, wept, and was just like, no, I'm done, I'm out. If that's what you think about me, then I'm not doing this anymore. And very quickly resigned after that. But I think my reaction to that was also largely fueled by burnout. Like, I think I was in a place where I couldn't, the game face let me hold their reaction and their feedback in the meeting, but that cut so deeply, and it was actually because I was really wounded already about how exhausted I was. So, I think that taught me a lot about feedback, and how, I've done quite a lot of post-processing for myself about that experience, and just how much there is going on underneath the surface for people, like for myself as the person receiving that feedback, and for the other person as the one offloading. It's just like a perfect collision of people not really coping with the environment that they found themselves in. Yeah, that was a hard
time. Really hard. This is a bit linked to, but I just popped into my mind. I'm an empathetic crier, so you talk about holding it together. I struggle. If it's me, like feeling targeted or criticized, I can hold it together while I'm there, and I deal with it later on. If they get upset about something, whether or not it's something I've done or it's something general, but it's worse if it's something that they're like telling me I've done and they're like start crying. Because I'm an empathetic crier, like my eyes will well up, and then I'll be like, oh my God. And it's really annoying because I find it really difficult. But I don't know what it is. It's just a weird reaction in me. So that's one of I find the hardest things. I have had two occasions in my career, like they are so like ingrained in my mind, when I messed up, like twice, where I've done something wrong by a person. I've made loads of mistakes. I'm not saying I don't make mistakes, but when you've upset a person by what you've done, in both cases unknowingly, but that was awful. And both of them had a very emotional, acute reaction, and which made it worse for me because it wasn't just that I had to take the critical feedback, I also had to take their emotional response and their upset. And I felt awful. My instinct was to apologize, but actually, when you step back, you have to unpack it all, like you said, and like kind of sort out their emotional reaction, your emotional reaction, what actually does or doesn't need like remediation.
I think it's almost worse when you don't get the feedback. I think the thing that I haven't done a lot of workplace mediation, but of the workplace mediation I have done, I don't do it often because I find it exhausting. I don't really enjoy it. But most often it's because there were a couple of key moments earlier in the relationship where if some feedback had been given in a timely way, all of this escalation and upset could have been avoided. But it's in people's instinct to avoid conflict that they squash it down, don't say anything, then it gets to the passive aggressive reactions, then it gets to the aggressive reactions, and then someone's having a grievance against somebody, and it's all
yeah.
Oh gosh, like the fear of conflict can cause so
100%.
many problems.
Yeah, when actually just asking some specific questions, like I remember so clearly having taken on a role and come into a team that there was one of these situations. There were multiple situations like this, all just exploding all over the place, and people refusing to be in the same room as their line manager unless a union rep was present. Just like beyond where it ever should have got to, and it just being like, did you ever stop to ask this person what was going on for that? Like if there was something else happening that was affecting, well, no, of course not. Like that's got nothing to do with work. It's like, but like, so much of this could have been avoided if you actually just had a conversation instead of browbeating them with a set of regs, like just it was astonishing coming in cold to it and just being like, oh wow, it so should never have got, if you'd had some really clear feedback and some very specific asks to say why this wasn't meeting expectations, you could have saved yourself so much time and effort and grief and chasing and endless meetings and mediations and HR advice. It was eye-opening. Definitely.
Expectations is key, and because it's often linked to performance management and things like that, and it's exactly the same thing. People don't raise concerns, and then you have someone come to you and say they've done this stuff wrong for 7 months and it's a really big problem now, and I'm like, and is this the first time we're talking about it with them? Because if so, you're going to have to forget the last 7 months and start from day zero now.
Yeah,
you can't hold things against people they didn't even know were happening, like in that way. Like if you
I've had times where you're thinking, oh, I don't want to make a big deal out of this, like I should just let this go, and then it happens again, then it happens again, and next thing you're 3 months in and you're thinking, I should have just said something in week one because now I feel like a bitch saying something, but it's like it actually is only going to get worse and it's only going to irritate me more, so I should probably just say something. So it's a good reminder.
Yeah, it makes me think maybe this is a good setup for our next episode where we can talk about what good looks like and how to set those standards and parameters early so that we're not in these situations.
Yeah, let's do that. See you next time, guys.
Bye.
Bye.